session, and very good afternoon one and all. As notified and as instructed by UGC MHRD, Visva-Bharati University is very sincere enough to conduct a 5 sessions, 3 days national webinar through Visva-Bharati Library Network, and gradually we are at the last session called 5th session, but not the least session. So in this 5th session, we have with our beloved professor, beloved colleague, who is supposed to be the associate professor, none other than Professor Biswajit Rai, Department of Bengali, Visva-Bharati. At the very outset, on behalf of the organizer, on behalf of the Visva-Bharati, on behalf of the Visva-Bharati Network, let me welcome you, sir, for this, for accepting our invitation and coming over here to deliver your speech and enlighten us. And now, like earlier sessions, let me welcome you all, my learned audience, those who have already joined, as I found 91 already joined, and I'm sure that someone will join, some others will join in passage of time. So after having a nice lunch, and since we all are Bengali, most of the participants are from Bengali, as I found, and after having a rice, it's very difficult to a teacher, to a speaker, to draw the attention of these learned colleagues. Still, I do believe that our speaker is well-known face in Bengal, in India, and abroad too. And I'm sure through his elaborative and attentive speech, he will draw your sincere attention. I am sure that you will not feel any monotonous. The topic which he will deliver in this August gathering is the idea of Ahimsa, Gandhiji Rabindranath comparison. And you know, those who are particularly living in the society of language and literature, to them, this Professor Biswajit Rai is very familiar, is very well-known person in the field of language and literature in and out India and outside India too. So he needs no introduction. Still, as a part of decorum, as a matter of courtesy, this is my duty being host to introduce the speaker before the learned audience. I'm not going very details about Dr. Rai, still a very brief, a very concise, because considering the time and other things, I'm just going to read a small about him. That is, Dr. Biswajit Rai is presently working as an associate professor in the Department of Bengali at Visva-Bharati. His publication on Rabindranath includes Rabindranath o Vivekananda, Swadeshe Samokale 2017, Sachalatar Gan 2019. His essay, Rabindranath and His Times, is included in the Cambridge Companion to Rabindranath Tagore. A well-known columnist writes regularly for the Anandabazar Patrika about socio-cultural aspects of Bengali life. At present, he is doing research on last decades of Rabindranath's life and time. So I'm sure that this is not suffice. These 3-4 lines is not suffice to speak about my my speaker. Still, in addition to that, he is regularly imparting his knowledge to his beloved students in UG, PG, MPhil, PhD, of course, at Visva-Bharati and other universities too. And he is very well-known figure who is supposed to cater his knowledge through various types of platform in language literature throughout India and abroad too. In addition to that, here we have just pronounced 2-3 publications, which is a sample glimpse of his entire showcase of publication. So he has a very good academician in the field of language and literature and well-known, particularly in Anandabazar Patrika and other things. Many people today will be just able to visualize what about looking our this Dr. Biswajit Rai, because you all are maybe very fan to read his column through Anandabazar Patrika and many other Patrika Desh and others. So with these few words, since I'm not the speaker, I will not take much time. With these few words, let me welcome you all and also welcome our today's speaker. And before to hand over the floor to our speaker, just let me give you 2-3 lines of message. As this is the last session, and like every session, let me allow just please and please mute your audio and video to offer a clean environment to the speaker so that everybody will listen him clearly and our host will be able to record his voice properly. Those who are not able to join in this session due to technicalities and other business, don't worry. Soon after the completion, soon after the completion of this speech will be available in the Visva-Bharati Network YouTube channel. And that channel name will be given in the chat box. And soon after his lecture is over, we'll give you the feedback thing on the basis of which my host will curate the data and you will be given certificate after 15th August onwards, we will given certificate of this session. So with these few words, let us enjoy today's speech of our final session. Dr. Biswajit Rai is now going to enlighten us. Dr. Rai, session is yours. Floor is handed over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Am I audible? Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I must give thanks to the Library Network Visva-Bharati for inviting me in this webinar. I'm not a Gandhi scholar, not a Rabindranath scholar too, but what I'm going today is just I will want to share my readings about Gandhi and Rabindranath with you. The title of my paper, The Idea of Ahimsa, Gandhi Rabindranath Comparison. Although comparison between Rabindranath and Gandhi is a much explored field, yet there are enough possibilities in a comparison of their thoughts in a new light. Generally, historians, in comparing their thoughts chronologically, arrange the political incidents of India and abroad, starting from 1915 to 1941, that is, from the year of advent of Gandhi in Indian politics to the year of demise of Tagore, and read agreements as well as disagreements between them regarding certain issues by archiving their letters and other writings. For example, we have a very good book published in the year 1997, compiled and archived by late historian Visva-Bharati Bhattacharya, Mahatma and the Poet. It is a very, very interesting book to read. The another one which I want to mention, Gandhi versus Tagore, the concept compilation and script by Shailesh Parekh. This script, this book was germinated on Subhashachi Babu's previous compilation. And in Bangla, we have Nepal Mujumdar's Antarjatikata, Jatiyota, Antarjatikata, এবং Rabindranath. So we have very good books in this field, but I think I have other possibilities to explore, and I will do that today. Though it is a standard method for historical comparison, but sometimes chronological reading defocuses various aspects of their philosophical standpoint. Gandhi is called Mahatma for his idea and praxis of Ahimsa, and sometimes he is also ridiculed, mocked in public domain for so-called impracticability of it. However, if we read his writings, comments, and jottings carefully, we will discover that for him, the idea of nonviolence is a process of thinking and praxis that can be challenged and reestablished at various contexts of time and crisis. Gandhi accepts those challenges candidly and reframes his idea of nonviolence by explaining different aspects of it. I think on the surface level, Tagore and Gandhi disagreed with each other in many points, but in their core, they had a strong philosophical bonding defined by Ahimsa. Before coming to my talk, let me quote a message given by Jawaharlal Nehru about Tagore and Gandhi. I'm quoting from Nehru's writing. Nehru wrote it to Krishna Kripalani. Gurudev and Gandhiji, their message was for the world, and yet both were 100% India's children and inheritors, representatives, and expositors of her age-long culture. The surprising thing is that both of these men, with so much in common and drawing inspiration from the same wells of wisdom and thought and culture, should differ from each other so greatly. No two persons could probably differ so much as Gandhiji and Tagore. But I think their disagreements, of course, on the surface level, but they have agreements in a particular point, and that point is, I think, the philosophy of Ahimsa. So in my talk, I will focus on 6 basic elements of Gandhian nonviolence and their corollaries, and compare those elementary aspects of nonviolence with relevant thoughts and writings of Rabindranath. I can still remember my boyhood indifference to Gandhian thought of Ahimsa. As a student of Ramakrishna Mission, I was much impressed by the heroic utterances of Swami Vivekananda. Teachers and monks of our institution taught us how practical Vivekananda was. As a pragmatic monk, he preaches Karma Yoga for the worldly people and criticizes Buddha for preaching nonviolence to everyone without considering one's need and position. Vivekananda warns that in many cases, cowards glorify nonviolence to veil their non-productive idleness. At the hour of crisis, when aggressive resistance is necessary to protect one's land and life from the enemy, these people escaped making nonviolence an excuse. We wrongly thought that Gandhi was an escapist. Of course, we thought in our school days. Vivekananda was an avid reader of writings of Bankim Chandra. Before Vivekananda, in the context of the 19th century, when the Anglicists blamed Indians for their effeminacy, Bankim Chandra constructed a counter discourse to prove manliness and ethical bravery of our past heroes. We can remember an article written by Bankim Chandra in Bangla, Bharat Kalanko. In that article, Bankim says, effeminate Hindus সাহেবদের মুখে লাগিয়াই রহিয়াছে. Sahibs generally call us effeminate Hindus. Bankim Chandra tried to establish his counter argument against this type of blames given by the Sahibs. In his book Dharmatattva, Bankim not only gives examples of the heroic moments from the pages of the Indian history, but also propagates the importance of bodybuilding for executing boldness in day to day life. Bankim Chandra and Vivekananda both equally highlight mental strength along with physical strength. However, common people think courage is an aggressive and manly expression of a well built body. I repeat, for the common people, courage is an aggressive and manly expression of a well built body. In our school days, we also thought in the same way, and so Mahatma, a man with a thin physique who taught Ahimsa, failed to impress us. Mahatma was not aggressive. Mahatma was not manly in our sense. So we think this man is not very impressive. Nahi chalega. In the first decade of the 20th century, when Gandhi was far away from Indian National Congress, forceful utterances of Bankim Chandra and Vivekananda were very popular among the extremist leaders of Bengal who opposed moderate nationalist agenda of the Indian National Congress. Sister Nivedita, beloved disciple of Vivekananda, openly supported extremist movement of Bengal and announced in the newspaper that she had no official relation with Ramakrishna Mission. Vivekananda's younger brother, Bhupendranath Datta, was arrested for being a member of the extremist group Jugantar. In our school days, we were very proud of those brave sons of our country who sacrificed their lives each year. On 15th August, we stage a drama based on life stories of revolutionaries. We never included Gandhi in those performances. Our actor friends, with their loud second voices, stern physical presence, and bodily manners, portrayed righteous indignation of the rebel freedom fighters. But as I grew up, some questions related to my school days drama always troubled me. Does bravery mean loud voice? Does boldness mean aggression? I got my answer in the writings of Rabindranath and Gandhi in many ways. These two thinkers define bravery in a different way. For both of them, nonviolence could be an expression of true courage. They openly expressed their doubts about the modus operandi that extremists adopted during the nationalist movements in colonial India. It was Rabindranath who first showed courage to raise finger against the popular means of killing Sahibs and looting treasuries, followed by the nationalist hardliners before Gandhi's entry to Indian politics. Gandhi, with his great South African experiences, came to India in 1915 and gradually restructured politics and policies of the Indian National Congress. Rabindranath, though he was then away from direct politics, read Gandhian ethics and strategy closely almost for 26 long years, and during these years, he expressed his doubts, disagreements, and agreements with Mahatma openly. But in one point, as I have said earlier, with some disagreements, they had a strong affinity based on the Ahimsa. Ahimsa, for both of them, is a possible expression of bravery that counters short sighted violence and concentrates on human energy for constructive Swadeshi. Ahimsa is undaunted enthusiasm that can stand amidst the all odds. Rabindranath, in his actions and thoughts, started to show his obvious preference to the idea of constructive Swadeshi in the first decade of 20th century. When Gandhi was away from his country, Rabindranath joined the anti-partition movement of 1905 and began to write profusely for cheering his comrades so that they could combat spiritedly against the brutal force of the British government. Before 1905, moderate Congress leaders generally lectured in English. Their skillful oratory failed to communicate with large numbers of fellow countrymen because of their illiteracy. During the anti-partition movement, Rabindranath used Bengali as a language of political communication. Plans and proposal of Samaj making were written, delivered, and discussed by the prominent Bengali Bhadraloks, and songs were composed to arouse the nationalist emotions of the common people. Rabindranath opened the floodgate of his creativity by writing many songs, mainly based on common tune of Bengali folk music. He realized that combination of the two, unbridled enthusiasm and focused planning for Samaj making, was necessary. But actual situation was quite different. He saw many people express their short-term angst and verbal anger against the oppressive, unjust government, but when time came for doing something permanent, without completing anything, their concern for Samaj and Swadesh burnt out like fireworks. There were freedom fighters too, who often used their weapons and sacrificed their lives, but meaningless destruction guided them nowhere. Tall talk and fierce hatred clouded public reason and, in a sense, doomed the prospect of the country. His arguments were specifically expressed in a written lecture delivered at Minerva Theatre, Calcutta. This lecture, Path o Patheo, Way and Allowance, was published as a pamphlet for public distribution. Tagore says, let me quote it in Bangla first, then my translation. শুনিয়াছি এমন কথাও কেহ কেহ বলেন যে ইংরেজের প্রতি দেশের সর্বসাধারণের বিদ্বেষই আমাদিগকে ঐক্যদান করিবে। একথা যদি সত্যই হয় তবে বিদ্বেষের কারণটি যখন চলিয়া যাইবে, ইংরেজ যখনই এদেশ ত্যাগ করিবে, তখনই কৃত্রিম ঐক্যসূত্রটি তো এক মুহূর্তে ছিন্ন হইয়া যাইবে। তখন দ্বিতীয় বিদ্বেষের বিষয় আমরা কোথায় খুঁজিয়া পাইব? তখন আর দূরে খুঁজিতে হইবে না, বাহিরে যাইতে হইবে না। রক্তপিপাসু বিদ্বেষ বুদ্ধির দ্বারা আমরা পরস্পরকে ক্ষতবিক্ষত করিতে থাকিব। My translation: I have heard that, according to some thinkers, hatred of the common people towards the British would integrate us. Suppose this is true, but when the British will leave this country, our artificial thread of integration will pull us apart. Wherefrom shall we get second target for hatred then? There will be no need to go out for finding the cause, as our bloodthirsty intelligence will nail each other. Secret societies were built up in many places of the city for chalking out blueprints of killing the Sahibs. one or two youths were appointed to bomb cabs. They happily accepted these national duties because injected hatred towards the Shahids pervaded their sense. If instead of cruel Sahib, innocent ladies were killed by their bombs, these young rebels hardly felt remorse for their wrongdoings. So neither the men with futile anger nor the freedom fighters with fierce hatred could be exemplified as real heroes whom country needed badly. Tagore thinks that in this critical hour, the man of real courage moves alone with great enthusiasm and does constructive works for his countrymen. His song "Jodi Tor Dak Shune Keu Na Ashe Re" was composed on 22nd September 1905 and published as Aka Lunar in Vandar, a nationalist periodical. The title of this song suggests Tagore's intention and actuality of the then prevailing environment. Tagore expresses his idea more clearly in another song composed on the same day that says, "If you have worries, please go back. যদি তোর ভাবনা থাকে ফিরে জানা." In these two songs, instead of futile anger, courage and enthusiasm for Swadesh are tuned aptly. Besides these songs, in his essay Swadeshi Samaj of 1905, Tagore distinctly states his plans for making a civil society without the help of the statist power. But he was mocked by the politicians. Rabindranath writes in a letter to Hemanto Baladevi, quote, when Swadeshi Samaj was written, the Congress people, in Bangla the word was Congress Wala, Congress people expressed their annoyance. They decided that mutual discussion for infinite hours with the allied government was the right action for the Indians to reach the ultimate goal. Due to my ignorance, I was able to claim that subjects could design their own governance. As Tagore felt that enthusiasm without a concrete plan was also meaningless, so he took certain projects to be executed by the people. He thought that it would be fruitful in two ways. Firstly, public enthusiasm will be sublimated by the constructive Swadeshi, and secondly, birth of a Samaj independent of political Raj would be possible. But hardly anybody lent his ears to him, so Tagore gradually came out from the direct politics and with his lone voice preached his socio-political opinions in his writings more and more. His idea of Swadesh and constructive Swadeshi is knitted in his two novels, Gora and Ghare Baire, published before Gandhi era of Indian politics. Gora, protagonist of the novel, in the first phase of his life as a devout Hindu Brahmin, rigidly follows the rituals of untouchability and punches the white sahibs when he feels it necessary. As Gora grows mature, he realizes limitations of his short-tempered anger and, being a poised human being, discovers his Swadesh beyond the ghetto of Hindutva. These two phases of Gora's life certainly mirrors his author's political experience of 1905. Nonviolent spirit of Gora leads him to a Bharatvarsha where harsh anger is sublimated by the accommodative kindness. The other novel, Ghare Baire, was written and published after Tagore's receiving of Nobel Prize in Literature. As a Nobel laureate, his opinions were getting more importance in and outside India than before. Realizing his importance, he became more vocal politically. Then, and his arguments were pivoting around the context of world politics. Ghare Baire was written in the backdrop of the First World War, where spirit of jingoism took its toll. Tagore finds symptoms of jingoism and its violent forms in the nationalist politics of his country and portrays those signs in this novel. Nikhilesh and Shandip, though intimate friends, are completely opposite in nature. Charismatic and aggressive Shandip strategically mixes religious beliefs with his politics of confrontational boycott. Nicholas, the benevolent Jamidar, refuses to impose boycott in his area. Readers of the novel Ghare Baire enjoys debates of two friends regarding nationalism, and as the plot evolves, immorality of Shandip's apparent anger in the name of the country was revealed. Shandip's politics of divide ignites the fire of communal riots, and Nikhilesh lost his life in his attempt to stop the fire after Shandip's clever escape. In these two novels, Rabindranath posits two opposite combating forces: A. Narcissistic anger, and B. Poised, nonviolent energy, face to face. In Gora, these two forces combat inside the mind of a man who, at the end, able to reach his self-possessed world. Though Tagore had much respect for the nationalist extremists who sacrificed their lives for their land, but in his novel Ghare Baire, he vilified Shandip. It definitely shows his reason for constructive Swadeshi that could be achieved calmly through various social and economic programs. So, before the advent of Gandhi in Indian politics, it was Rabindranath who argued for alternative method of Swadeshi, which was nonviolent, though not strictly in Gandhian sense. I want to make a passing comment here. Founder of the ancient Indian Rasho theory identified 9 basic emotions that each man or woman must have in them and termed them as a sthayi bhav. There is a long list of 9 emotions, all of you know. Krodh and utshaho, anger, indignation, krodh, and utshaho, enthusiasm, are two emotions enlisted as basic or sthayi in their taxonomy. Abhinavagupta, a 10th century Rasha theorist, explains how a reader gets immense pleasure by absorbing any one of these basic emotions through reading, hearing, or watching a text. When we watch a drama or experience a real drama like scene, our hidden emotions come to the surface and we get pleasure from them. This process of consumption of emotion is called Rosho Chorbona. As the basic emotion is consumed, it transforms into Rosho. Rudra and Bir are two important rasos that are categorically discussed in Indian poetics. Rudra comes out of Krodh and Vira comes out of Utshaho. An actor can express Krodh by means of loud voice, stern body manners, red eyes, etc. But what are the external signs of Utshaho or enthusiasm? Expressions of Utshaho are not only different from Krodh, they are more subtle in manner. So it is very difficult for an actor to express external gesture of Utshaho. In my school days, my actor friends easily expressed signs of anger of the rebel sons of India on stage. But it was difficult for them to act as a man who had to combat nonviolently against the Raj. Gandhi and Rabindranath both are, in a sense, personification of Virarasa. It was Utshaho, not Krodh, that worked as principal emotion that helped them to imagine their Swadesh. But Tagore and Gandhi had different goals to reach. Gandhi used Ahimsa not only as a tool for making civil society, he also operated it politically. Now I am coming to Gandhi. Gandhi, in his article titled The Doctrine of the Sword, published in Young India, categorically elaborated elementary aspects of his Ahimsa Dharma. Let us first point-wise summarize his text by quoting his own words. Now, I am going to look at those 6 elementary aspects of Gandhian Ahimsa, Dharma of Ahimsa Dharma, by quoting Gandhi one by one. Number 1, strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. So, physical capacity and indomitable will. These are the key words. Strength does not come from physical capacity. For Gandhi, strength is not an expression of physical capacity. Strength is indomitable will. The second point, I quote, the religion of nonviolence is not meant merely for the rishis and saints. It is meant for the common people as well. So, a common man, common person like us, like me, like you, he also can practice non-violence. 3. Again, I'm quoting Gandhi. I have therefore ventured to place before India the ancient law of self-sacrifice. Civil resistance are nothing but new names for the law of suffering. So, this civil resistance for Gandhi, this is not new. The law of self-sacrifice, it was, of course, according to him, an Indian concept. Now just Gandhi renamed it as law of suffering in his civil resistance. The fourth one, nonviolence in its dynamic condition means conscious suffering. This point is very important. Nonviolence in its dynamic condition means conscious suffering. You suffer, but you must suffer consciously. You suffer, but your suffering must be your intention. Fifth, I want her to practice nonviolence, being conscious of her strength and power. It must still serve the same purpose, namely bring her delivery from the crushing weight of British injustice if a sufficient number of people practice it. If a sufficient number of Indians practice nonviolence, then it will work effectively upon the British and they will leave our country in future. According to Gandhi, the nonviolence is as effective as the way of the extremists. The sixth one, Gandhi says, my religion has no geographical limits. The religion of nonviolence, which I believe to be the root of Hinduism. According to me, these are 6 elementary aspects of Gandhian philosophy of Ahimsa as preached by Mahatma Gandhi in the year 1920 in his article, The Doctrine of Sword, published in Young India. These are the 6 elementary aspects of the Gandhian religion of nonviolence. Gandhi wrote this article 1 year, 4 months after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. His apparent silence and inaction after the brutal killing at Jallianwala Bagh baffled Rabindranath. Tagore, after the massacre of Jallianwala Bagh, renounced his knighthood, and wrote to the British Viceroy Chelmsford that I think all of you have read that famous letter written by Tagore. In that letter, Tagore says, disarmed and resourceless population was killed by the most terribly efficient organization. So, if we read Gandhi's article in this context, it is natural to doubt the applicability of the religion of nonviolence against the most terribly efficient organization of the British India. But Gandhi proved his faith. Before coming to that, let me explain Gandhi's 6 sermons of nonviolence one by one. The first one is, you have heard, strength does not come from physical capacity, it comes from an indomitable will. Gandhi makes initially a mind-body divide and posits mind over body. For him, the real source of strength is indomitable will. For example, Mr. X with thin physique may win over Mr. Y, who has a strong body without will. This concept of mind-body divide and mind's hierarchy domination over body is very common among the Indian mystics. Let me give an example from Ramakrishna Kathamrita, Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. In that book, Ramakrishna tells about two wrestlers. One is body personified, and the other one is vibrant with inner spirit. When they enter into the ground, all cheer the man with huge body as would-be champion. But soon the spectators realizes that it is spirit, not body, that dominates. Apparently, inferior wrestler wins the game as he has indomitable mind power. Gandhi was familiar with such kinds of spiritual parables and applied models of those stories in shaping his political convictions. Organized forces of the colonizers were huge and terrible, but they missed indomitable will because of their unethical position. So, according to Gandhi, India could resist the British with a strength of indomitable will. Now, I am coming to the second point. The religion of nonviolence is not meant merely for the rishis and saints, it is meant for the common people as well. As one may think this kind of idea is impractical, Gandhi assures that the idea of ahimsa is also meant for the common people. His assurance reminds us of previously written counter-arguments of Swami Vivekananda. At the end of the 19th century, a travelogue authored by Swamiji titled Prachyo Paschatya was serialized in the pages of the Udbodhan, a periodical edited by the brother monk Swami Trigunatitananda. Perhaps you know that almost all the serious Bengali writings of Swami Vivekananda was serialized in this periodical Udbodhan. His Bartaman Bharat, present India, Bilad Jatrid Patra, later of a traveler, Prachyo Paschatya, East and West, Bhabbar Kotha, all these major articles and writings were serialized in Udbodhan. In this essay, Vivekananda compares between two different cultures, the Eastern and the Western. He says Eastern people are saintly by nature and also characterized by falsehood. People who are just pretending sainthood damage balance of life. He splits up the domain of religiosity in two parts. A, the world of moksha, and B, the world of dharma. So for Vivekananda, the religious world, our existence can be divided in two parts. The first one is the world of moksha, and the second one is the world of dharma. You were not allowed to apply the laws of the world of moksha in the world of dharma. As the rishis and other saintly persons are strivers of the world of moksha, non-violence is an important ethics practiced by them. But idea of non-violence, according to Vivekananda, is meaningless in the competitive world of dharma. Here, Vivekananda uses the word dharma not in the sense of religion, but to mean the natural physical world where we exist and aspire for better living. So, if we perform non-violence, according to Vivekananda, in the world of dharma, enemies will surely come and conquer us for two reasons. Firstly, those who are practicing ahimsa for attaining moksha are completely unconcerned about the social and political reality of the world of dharma. Secondly, those incapable cowards pretending to be non-violent will not fight to resist the rivals. Basically, India lost her freedom in the hands of the foreigners for the two kinds of indifferences of these two groups. When enemies came, most of the Indians were busy to prove their inaction as supreme non-violence, and the few other saintly persons that India had were not at all bothered about the political fate of their land. So Vivekananda prefers Krishna and Krishna's idea of karma yoga than Buddha's idea of non-violence as an ideal principle for the world of dharma. In the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when Arjun was lamenting inactively, Krishna gave him courage and impetus for fighting. So for Vivekananda, Krishna is the iconic figure. Krishna can give us impetus, but not Buddha, not non-violence. Gandhi, unlike Vivekananda, thinks that the philosophy of non-violence can be applied in both the worlds. It is meant for the rishis as well as for the common people and can be used as a political weapon against the Raj. But for using non-violence as a political weapon, people must satisfy some conditions. This is very important. If you want to use non-violence as a political weapon, then Satyagrahis, people must satisfy some conditions. What are those conditions? What are the satisfactory conditions upon which workability of non-violence depends? The last 4 points among the 6 of elementary aspects of Gandhian Ahimsa that I have quoted above can be categorized into 3 different sections. In the third point, Gandhi describes the nature of non-violence. The third point, I have therefore ventured to place before India the ancient law of self-sacrifice. Let me explain. According to him, non-violence is a form of suffering, and nature of that suffering resembles with ancient law of self-sacrifice. A mythological story may well explain the nuances of self-sacrifice. Dothichi, an ancient sage, sacrifices his life so that god Indra may use his bones in making the devastating weapon Vajra against the Asura. Story of Dothichi's self-sacrifice was very popular among the 19th century poets. Hemchandra Banerjee, a well-known Bengali poet, wrote his literary epic Britra Sanghar based on the sacrificial story of Dothichi. Gandhi renames their self-sacrifice as suffering of non-violence. In point 4 and 5, he describes conditions under which the suffering attains its goal. A non-violent warrior must suffer consciously and must be aware of his strength. Very important. A non-violent warrior must suffer consciously and must be aware of his strength. Unless these two conditions are fulfilled, non-violent servicemen will not be able to change the mind setup of their opponents. In the ground of Jallianwala Bagh, demonic British force mutilated commoners unethically. And as the gathered people of Punjab did not stand consciously as well as courageously in a self-sacrificial mode, their sufferings had hardly any impact on the brutal army of the Raj. These 2 points can be grouped under section B as the nature and conditions of sufferings are interrelated. Section A and section B are interrelated. This point of Gandhi reminds me of Rabindranath's drama Muktodhara. This drama was written 2 years after the publication of Gandhi's above mentioned article, The Doctrine of the Sword. In his drama, like Gandhi, Tagore also proclaims consciousness as principal condition of religion of Ahimsa. The English translation of Muktodhara named Waterfall was published in the Modern Review in May 1922. So it was possible for the non-Bengali readers to compare between these 2 texts, but no such effort, according to my limited knowledge, was made. Waterfall is a story of 2 struggling settlements, Uttarkut and Shivtarai. The powerful king raises a dam over Muktodhara with help of an engineer so that he can impose water tax on the land of Shivtarai. Dhananjay Bairagi voices his opinion against this partial unethical decision and goes from one village to another for getting the public support. Obviously, king and his government give orders to imprison him. Common people violate this order and want to react violently. In this situation, Dhananjay preaches them how they can protest effectively in a non-violent method. Tagore's original Bengali is much better and lucid than his own English translation, so I must read out from the Bangla first and then Tagore's English translation. First, Bangla. Ganesh, a character, is talking with Dhananjay. Ganesh wants to react violently, but Dhananjay answer in another way. গণেশ আর সহ্য হয় না, হাত দুটো নিষ্পিস করছে। ধনঞ্জয় তাহলে হাত দুটো বেহাত হয়েছে বল। গণেশ ঠাকুর একবার হুকুম করো, ওই ষণ্ডামার্ক চণ্ডপালের দণ্ডটা খসিয়ে নিয়ে মার কাকে বলে একবার দেখিয়ে দি। In English, Father, Ganesh, Father, give me your orders. Let me snatch away the baton from the scoundrel Chandopal and prove to him what a blow can really mean. মার কাকে বলে একবার দেখিয়ে দি। ধনঞ্জয় answers, মার কাকে না বলে তা দেখাতে পারিস নে? জোর বেশি লাগে বুঝি? ঢেউকে বাড়ি মারলে ঢেউ থামে না, হালটাকে স্থির করে রাখলে ঢেউ জয় করা যায়। You had better try to prove what a no blow can really mean. The helm is not for beating the waves, but for conquering them by keeping itself steady. Second Shivtarai citizen, then what is your wish? তাহলে কি করতে বলো? ধনঞ্জয় answers in Bangla first, মার জিনিসটাকে একেবারে গোড়া ঘেঁষে কোপ লাগাও। ধনঞ্জয় says, raise your head, say that nothing hurts you, and then the heart will receive its death blow. মাথা তুলে যেমনি বলতে পারবি লাগছে না, অমনি মারের শিকড় যাবে কাটা। লাগছে না বলা শক্ত। It is difficult to say that nothing hurts me. ধনঞ্জয় answers in Bangla, আসল মানুষটি যে তার লাগে না, সে যে আলোর শিখা, লাগে জন্তুটার যে মাংস মার খেয়ে কেই কেই করে মরে, হাঁ করে রইলি যে, কথাটা বুঝলি নে? The true man within us is a flame of fire. He consumes all hearts in light. Only the brute beast is hot. The brute beast is flesh, and it goes whining when it is struck. Here, like Gandhi, Tagore also makes a body-mind divide and locates Ahimsa as the power of a true man who lives within the fleshy body. But this is only Dhananjay's realization. Other people of Shivtarai are yet to understand this message. Unless they consciously understand and believe this philosophy of no blow, the non-violent revolt is impossible. So after preaching this philosophy of no blow, Dhananjay tells them to be consciously independent in their action. Dhananjay says, the more you cling to me while trying to swim, the more you forget your lessons in swimming and also keep dragging me down. I must take my leave of you and go where nobody follows me. Each and every Satyagrahi will not mimic Gandhi in an ideal stage of non-violent revolt. One should follow call of oneself. During the debate regarding Charka, Rabindranath criticizes Gandhi followers for mimicking mechanically their ideological father. So, non-violence, conscious suffering, these two terms are very important for Gandhi and important for Tagore. Rabindranath writes Muktadhara 2 years after Gandhi's article was published in Young India. And in this point, they of course agree with each other. Now coming the last point of the 6 elementary aspects of the Ahimsa. The last point was, my religion has no geographical limits, and I believe to be the root of Hinduism. The last point, which I have quoted from the text, the doctrine of the sword describes scope and prospect of religion of nonviolence, which can be classified separately under section C. According to Mahatma, this method of nonviolence can be applied as a political weapon in any country of the world. Gandhi had his own experience of South Africa. This new religion of nonviolence, according to Gandhi, would be the root of Hinduism. This is very important point. Gandhi was trying to propose a different kind of Hinduism, non-violent Hinduism. This was Gandhi's idea. The idea of non-violent Hinduism counters the idea of religious crusade and situates Hinduism as a universal religion. Bankim Chandra and Vivekananda, both the former thinkers of Gandhi, also argued in their own ways to establish universal qualities of Hinduism. Bankim Chandra's opinions were restricted in India, but Vivekananda went abroad and raised his voice for Hinduism that hates, I quote, sectarianism, bigotry, and fanaticism. Vivekananda, in his introductory address at the Parliament of Religions held at Chicago in 1893, expressed his pride for belonging to a nation which had sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and nations which of the earth. In this frame of reference, Gandhi had a connection with Vivekananda, but the political reality in which Gandhi was scribbling his sermons of Ahimsa was quite different from the previous century. The politics of divide came to the surface. Now, one can ask an essential question. How were these elementary aspects of Gandhian Ahimsa applied to the freedom struggle of India? Was Gandhi able to prove his dharma in his political career? Though Gandhi's own life and writings are self-evident, I would like to engage assessments of two Bengali Gandhiites, namely Nirmal Kumar Bush and Ananda Shankar Rai, for addressing these kinds of queries. Nirmal Kumar Bush summarized Gandhian philosophy of Ahimsa in a small paragraph in his Bengali essay titled Government এবং Gandhibad, Government and Gandhiism. Bose explains, I quote my translation, Gandhiji talks about courageous resistance. A Satyagrahi should be a stubborn one, and during the hours of resistance, stand still amidst all the blows. Gandhiji tries to perplex his oppositions by showing stubbornness. He hopes that when the oppressor fails to win and feeling weird, only then he would wish to discuss the matter of disagreement with the Satyagrahi. This is not merely Bose's annotation to Gandhian verdict of nonviolence. In fact, Nirmal Bose worked with Gandhi in Noakhali, where Mahatma was moving from one village to another to stop fires, communal riots. Bose also witnessed effectiveness of Bapu's Ahimsa there, but mind it, Nirmal Kumar Bose never eulogized Mahatma in his writings. He critically psychoanalyzed Bapu in his book My Days with Gandhi, and all of you know the Navajivan Publishing House refused to publish Nirmal Babu's manuscript. So this paragraph, I think, can be treated as a supportive document of effectiveness of Gandhian Ahimsa stated by an argumentative Gandhi lover after getting fragmented independence. The next thinker I just want to quote here, Ananda Shankar Rai, an ICS officer who watched British machinery of power closely. Ananda Shankar writes in the preface to his Bengali book Gandhi. This is also a very good Bangla boy book about Gandhi. Ananda Shankar writes, during the days of non-cooperation, I was a blind supporter of Gandhi. Then, as I was influenced by Tagore, I became his detractor, but returned to Mahatma again because no alternative way was found and no leader of confidence could be named. This time I was neither a blind supporter nor a criticizer of him. What were the main reasons that caused anti-Gandhi stand of Tagore? L.K. Elmhurst, after joining the village reconstruction program at Surul, heard from Rabindranath about poet's critical observation on Gandhian political program. Elmhurst, in his book Poet and Plowman, describes it in the direct speech of Tagore. I quote, Gandhi came to visit me in Calcutta at my home Jurashako. Tagore was saying to Elmhurst. He wanted very much to persuade me to take my stand with him in public on one or other of the planks of his political platform. But Rabindranath refused to join primarily because he thought that he was not a political person. Other causes of his refusal were ideological, particularly Gandhi's strategic move of non-cooperation did not get Tagore's favor. He thought non-cooperation would lead to the cult of selfish and short-sighted nationalism, but Mahatma's path of ahimsa got his approval. Ananda Shankar quotes many responses of the opposition political leaders and foreign reporters who witnessed political marches of non-violent soldiers in his book. These extracts prove that silent but conscious sufferings of the Satyagrahis touched the hearts of the enemies to a great extent. Roy gives Webb Miller's reference in his book. Miller was the only foreign correspondent who covered Gandhian demonstration at Darshana Saltwork. Roy writes, I quote, Webb Miller, during his works for 18 years as a reporter, experienced hundreds and hundreds of encounters, street fighters, rebels, etc., in 20 countries, but never witnessed such heartbreaking scenes. The United Press copy narrated, I quote, suddenly at a word of command, scores of native police rushed upon the advancing marchers and rained blows on their heads. Not one of the marchers even raised an arm to fend off the blows. They went down like 10 pins. These responses definitely show effectiveness of Gandhian nonviolence. Gandhi ably taught his political followers that a truly spirited mind can defy brutal, brutal coercion of the Raj. In a short note titled Khan Sahib's Ahimsa, published in Horijon in 1940, Gandhi quoted Abdul Ghaffar Khan's statement where Khan Sahib claimed, I quote, "Nonviolence has added greatly to the courage of the Pathans because they were previously addicted to violence far more than others. They have profited by nonviolence much more. We shall never really and effectively defend ourselves except through nonviolence. Khudai Khidmatgars must therefore be what our name implies, pure servants of God and humanity, by laying down our own lives and never taking any life." Khan Sahib's announcement shows the faith of nonviolence crosses the boundary of narrow sectarianism. A Muslim can also embrace Gandhi's religion. Mahatma adds in his note that Khan Sahib's devotion to Islam does not mean disrespect to other faiths. This incident of transformation from the violent to non-violent prompt me to refer a letter of Rabindranath written to Kalpana Datta. All of you know Kalpana Datta. She was a comrade of Master Surya Sen. Datta was released from jail in the year 1939 because of Tagore's sincere prayer and apology to the British government. After getting released from prison, Kalpana offered her gratitude to Gurudev in a letter. Her earnest prayer was that, I'm quoting from Kalpana's letter written in Bangla, I've translated, "Please bless me so that I can be an efficient worker for my country after recovering from heart full of morbidity and meanness." This is a changed Kalpana Datta. She repents for her violent deed and wants to work in a constructive way. Tagore answers, there are many pending works that can be done calmly and quietly. I repeat, there are many pending works that can be done calmly and quietly. I bless that your experience of sorrow will fill up your life. Gandhi and Tagore both can influence and change the course of lives of the hardliners if they have strong sense of morality. Even Gandhi's Ahimsa touched opposition leader Churchill's mind. Though time and again brutalities were shown by the colonial British officials, they at least followed some codes of conduct. But do their philosophy of Ahimsa work in an amoral framework? I have already reached the last part of my longish paper. My question is, do their philosophy of Ahimsa, Tagore's and Gandhi's, work in an amoral framework? An amoral power monger does not feel concerned about conscious human sufferings. So, ahimsa, sufferings, inner strength, all these words and ideas are meaningless to him. He or she just fires the satyagrahis coldly to death. Therefore, to resist an amoral brute, counter military forces are necessary. Total revolution and bloodshed are obvious in that reality. Do we then disown their philosophy of ahimsa? This is my last question to Gandhi and Tagore. And I just want to answer this question from their relevant texts differently. The first, Rabindranath. Though Rabindranath preferred non-violence, he knew that sometimes one had to find some other way out. His drama Rakta Karabi ends in a fierce combat between workers and oppressors. And now I'm coming to Gandhi. Gandhi writes, I claim to be a practical idealist. This is Gandhi's claim. He wants to be a practical idealist, not a visionary. What does it mean by these word practical idealist? We can get our answer in a short paragraph of Gandhi published in Horizon in 1933. This paragraph was given as a foreword of Gandhi's Hind Swaraj. Mahatma writes, I quote, I would like to say, diligent readers of my writings and to others who are interested in them, that I am not at all concerned with appearing to be consistent. In my search after truth, I have discarded many ideas and learned many things. Old as I am in age, I have no feeling that I have ceased to grow inwardly or that my growth will stop at the dissolution of the flesh. A practical idealist is always inconsistent. He or she changes his or her position as she grows inwardly. Gandhi changed his mind according to the need for the protection of humanity. This is very important point for me. Gandhi claims that he is inconsistent. He can change his mind if necessary. And now I will quote a paragraph of Gandhi, Nirmal Kumar Bose, on the cover of his book, Ganatantrer Sankat. This is Ganatantrer Sankat. This edition is Gandhi centenary edition. This edition is now out of market. And in this edition, Nirmal Kumar Bose quoted a paragraph of Gandhi in Bangla at the cover. This is this quote. If you read this, it is unlike Gandhi. But Gandhi says this: मैं निर्दय हूं, আমার হৃদয়ে দয়া মায়া নাই। গণতান্ত্রিক অধিকার প্রতিষ্ঠার জন্য যদি কিছু লোকক্ষয়ও হয়, আমি নীরবে সহ্য করিব। Gandhi is saying, what he is saying? Let me translate it into English. I am unmerciful. আমার হৃদয়ে দয়া মায়া নাই। The father of Ahimsa is saying that আমার হৃদয়ে দয়া মায়া নাই। I am unmerciful. I have no compassion or kindness in my heart. And the third point is very necessary. If necessary, for the sake of democracy, I tolerate silently killing of some people. So the father of Ahimsa is saying, if necessary, I tolerate silently killing of some people. So Gandhi can change according to perspective. Gandhi can change according to the need. Yes, both of them are faithful to the God of non-violence. But if a moral demon comes to kill humanity, they will surely stand violently against him. So this is my humble submission as a reader of Gandhi and Rabindranath. Thank you all.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Rai, for your nice and very concise as well as to the point what you have read out, what you have experienced that has been stated before this audience very efficiently and cordially too. Before going to conclude, let me bring you some questions as intent to ask by participants. First one is from Rima Laha. He wanted to know from you that in the movie Ghore Baire, directed by Satyajit Ray, Nikhilesh is dead and Bimola erased her vermilion mark at the end. But in the novel Ghore Baire by Tagore, there is no direct indication of Nikhil's death at the end. It shows that Nikhilesh is wounded. So her question is, Is Nikhilesh dead actually in the novel?
directly says that Nicholas is dead, but there is some suggestion. And Satyajit, in his movie, uh, took that suggestion and finally make his statement that Nikhilesh passed away. So this is my answer.
Okay, then another questions from Shashwata Bhattacharya. Was there any change in the mood of Gandhi's non-violence in non-cooperation movement and Quick India movement? If we have seen a completely changed Gandhi in Quit India movement when he said, I don't ask from you my own non-violence. You can decide what you can do in this struggle. While in the case of non-cooperation movement, he withdrew the whole movement for Chauri Chaura incident, or he realized the need of the hour.
Surely, Gandhi can change himself. In fact, Annada Shankar Rai, in his Bengali book Gandhi, uh, Rai, in fact, describes this incident, Chauri Chaura and the Quit India movement, and surely Gandhi changes himself, his idea, according to the hour of need.
Okay, then another question by Dr. Paramita Rai, sir. In which way then you would see the effectivity of nonviolence is at its metaphysical doctrine as in Shunyata or Madhyamika, Buddhist or practical application of it in Karmavada doctrine as stated by Lord Krishna to Arjuna?
I think Gandhi is very practical and he takes suggestions from different philosophical schools and changes those ideas according to his own feelings. So, Gandhi, during his life, he says, I'm searching for the truth. So, this is his feelings. He is a good reader, avid reader of different texts. But at the same time, he practices his way, and those ways are not strictly or copybook examples of any certain philosophical thinking.
Right. Then another question. It is a very informative lecture, but I want to know in the context of 6 aspects of nonviolence, what do you think as politician could Gandhi was able to practice his religion of nonviolence perfectly in his political thoughts?
Gandhi tried to practice, and when necessary, Gandhi changes his ways of thinking. And that is why, at the end of my paper, I am quoting Gandhi from an article published in 1933 in Young India, where he is saying, I am very inconsistent. This is a very important word. Don't think Gandhi as a saintly consistent person. He is inconsistent. And when he is saying that I am a practical idealist, then he is referring to his inconsistency. And this kind of inconsistency is depends upon his feelings and upon his sense of truth.
Then this is supposed to be the last question of the session. Mr. Manoj Kumar Mondol, his question is, what was the position of R.N. Tagore against Satyagraha view of Gandhiji?
Tagore was a supporter of the way of nonviolence. But Tagore says it must be a conscious attitude. If Satyagrahi is only mimicking Gandhi, then it will be a sheer failure. For example, I am quoting a paragraph written by uh, Elmhurst in his book Poet and Plowman, and Tagore was giving his response to Elmhurst. I'm quoting from that book. Tagore says, "Look down there and see what your so called nonviolent followers are up to. They have stolen those pieces of cloth from the bazaar. They have now gone and lit a bonfire with them in my courtyard. You can see for yourself. There they are howling around it. Is that nonviolence, Gandhiji?" So here, Tagore is very critical. Who are mimicking Gandhi will not get support of Rabindranath. But if you are a true Satyagrahi, you have to listen your inner call. This is Tagore's view.
Yes, by this time, one more question for you from Shivli Kumar. She is from Arambag Netaji Mahavidyalaya. Thank you so much, respected sir, for nice presentation. Gandhi is a practitioner of non-violence. He applied non-violence through his whole life. I want to know from you that is Gandhi's non-violence is relevant to this present scenario?
I think, of course, we do practice nonviolence in a moral framework. But when the framework is not moral, amoral, then I think the Gandhian kind of nonviolence will not work. So, this is my answer.
Okay, so by answering of these questions, I would like to congratulate and also extend our deep sense of regards on behalf of the organizer. Though our speaker is the member of our Visva-Bharati family, still this is a part of decorum of any webinar, seminar, to extend our heartfelt gratitude, thanks to you, sir, for sparing time with us and enlightening with your thought-provoking, precise, and very, very informative session with this learned audience under the caption, the third National VVLN webinar on Gandhiji, and with your valuable speech under the title, The Idea of Ahimsa, Gandhiji Rabindranath comparison, this webinar is going to be finally an end. So I would like to extend our deep regards to you, sir, and also the participants, those who are patientfully listen all the 5 sessions, express their gratefulness and congratulate us for organizing this kind of session and interacting through the questions with the speakers. And last but not least, I would like to extend our deep sense of regards. Am I audible? Deep sense of regards to the Visva-Bharati University administration in general and Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir, Madam Registrar in particular, only for their administrative approval, permission, assignment, we are here to organize this kind of seminar on a great personalities, not only in India, rather abroad, that is Mahatma Ji. So with these few words, I would like to convey again our deep sense of regards and also note a few points regarding, because many of the participants, I have doubt how much a percentage of the participants is very much keen to listen the speakers to acquire some knowledge from the thought content. Instead of that, many of the participants, I found that they're much worry about the feedback link and when certificate is going to be dispersed. So to clear your confusion, let me answer. Feedback link is already been posted in the chat box as well as sent by my host during this session through your mail, and you all are requested to submit your feedback. Already you have submitted, and those who have not yet submitted, they may submit today or tomorrow and day after tomorrow, and we will try to curate data, and then certificate distribution will take in place on or after 15th August. On or after 15th August. So don't want to ping up us, don't want to ring up us, don't want to mail up us that when we are going to certificate, when we are going to give certificate. So after 15th August, I think, or before 15th August, we will process up and we will distribute certificate. Now, before to wrap up this session, before to wrap up these 3 days, 5 sessions webinar is going to be concluded. I request all my learned participants to unmute your video so that my host will take a photo for the session along with the speaker when he is available on the floor. You may have desiredness to take a photo with the speaker. So Dr. Rai will be in the floor, and I request you all to unmute your video, not the audio. Audio will make a noise. So don't unmute your audio, just to video, so that my host will take up. And then finally, we declare the session, the webinar is over. Then we will leave the meeting. So you please now unmute your video, please. এই ছবি একটু স্ক্রিন থেকে নিয়ে নাও, এখান থেকেও নিতে পারো, ওখানে একটা নিয়ে নাও, এখানে নাও, এখানে এখানে দেখো সবাই এসে গেছে।